We really want to just bring out a little bit that child welfare isn't just about kids.
It's about family welfare.
It's about family welfare. So tell me first of all what you do, who you are, what you do.
So my name is Dominica Montaño, and I am the clinical coordinator for the services here in the 13th Judicial District. And that means that I oversee the social work attorney model for the JQ cases, and we're called Family Support Services. And what we do is we partner with an attorney who is representing the interest of a parent in these cases. And so in that, we become a clinical case manager for the parent. And what that goes a little bit further beyond just case management. You know, people typically think of a case manager as someone who sort of organizes some resources, hands them to the parent, and gives the parent a little bit of direction in how to move forward. But what we do is a little different, so our social workers are all licensed master's level social workers. And so they all have an understanding of substance abuse at a deeper level than most case managers, a standard case manager does, as well as mental health issues. A lot of the clients that we see have one or the other, or are comorbid. So that means that they suffer from both mental health issues as well as substance abuse issues. And so that further complicates things. And so the social workers working with the parents have to have an awareness and knowledge of theoretical basis of mental health as well as substance abuse issues, and familiarity with modalities that are appropriate for particular clientele demographic. So one mode of practice isn't the same for every parent, because there may be a nuance of maybe a low functioning parent, or versus a high functioning parent, intellectually speaking. So that would create a difference in how we move forward with the modality. And by modality, clinical modalities, it's not that we practice clinical work, we're not therapists, but we have the knowledge base to make sure that we integrate and sort of work to help the clinician solidify coping mechanisms throughout the week with the client. So it requires a high degree of expertise for the social worker, and then as well as a combination of legal knowledge in the case, understanding what the timeframes are, understanding what the intention of the attorney is in the case, so that we can help explain those things to the client as well. So we work on through a lot of different rounds. We're working with neuropsychologists, psychologists, psychiatrists, therapists, attorneys, CYFD staff, and any other ancillary element that the client may be attached to. Maybe working on education, housing, SSI benefits. And so we have to have a lot of levels of knowledge to bring to the client to help them understand how to maneuver all that and move forward in it, and then keep everybody connected in the case.
And how does that, for the person who is thinking, well, how does that help kids? Is that really helping children? What is your answer to that?
I would say absolutely, and of course. If the parent is in a better space, the family will be in a better space. Real deficit on many levels and many realms, and not knowing and understanding how to best advocate for themselves or their children. And so we work to do that, to show them how to advocate for themselves. And a lot of times that starts with we advocate for them and show them how to do it, model that. But when a parent becomes empowered and understands what they can do, and comes to understand different realms and concepts that everybody expects them to know that they weren't exposed to before, they become a better individual, first off, and then in that they can become a better parent.
And do you ever see the kids in these cases?
In many cases we do. Yeah, where we can see this. Sometimes we see the kids in court. Sometimes we see the children at the parent-child visits. We get to watch the parent interact with the child, and then afterward help process that interaction with the parent. We are up to par on what's going on with the child from the caseworker, CYFD. On a few occasions, we have actually been assigned to the children as well.
And so do you have a sense from the observations that you do and whatever interactions that you have, do you have a sense of how these children view their parents where something, unpleasant has happened?
Yeah, I would say they very much love their parents and are actually quite protective of their parents, because they see their parents getting attacked and feel like there's a real lack of understanding of what the dynamic is and a lack of understanding of what their norm might be, whether it's healthy or unhealthy, without judgment, it's what the child knows. And in that, if we don't do that, and we come at the parent or the family, because when you come at the parent, the child sees that as their unit as well, as, someone who they're attached to and they're a part of. And so in attacking the parent, the child feels attacked, and doesn't feel that we're really working for the benefit of the family, but against the family. I think the children have a hard time separating themselves from their parent. And so when we treat the parent one way, the child identifies as, that's my family. This is how you're treating my family.
And do you see that across all different age groups? Is that primarily youth, the 14 and overs? Is it young children, or do you?
I would say across the board. Yeah, across the board. I mean, with the exception of infants,
Right,
but
sure.
for sure with children who have, when they're at the age of awareness, teenagers and whatnot, there's definitely that sense of protectiveness, and they become defensive, and it can lead to, so many times we come to meetings and, you hear people saying, well, the child gets fussy when they come back home or ornery when they return from the visits. And we sort of address that like, oh, well, then we need to get rid of visits or lessen the visits so we don't have to deal with the consequence of the visit. When in fact, more visits are what we need, because then the pattern of coming to be with the parent, stabilizing the bond, enhancing it, and making sure it's maintained, which also increases buy-in from the parent. And with more frequency, the child will become more accustomed to, this is the routine. I think that the issue is they become fussy and ornery because they don't see their parent enough. And so with so few interactions, it leads the child to feeling angry.
And that's the person that they've been used to,
yes,
right,
correct.
up until now, right?
Right.
Can you tell me a little bit about your perspective in those cases,
when
or
the child can't come
when
home,
a child can't
what is
come
in the
home?
best interest of the child? When all of the professionals involved with that scenario where it's in the best interest of the child for them not to come home, if we deal with that scenario with respect for the parent and the child and the relationship and their love, we still have to honor that there's love there. And if we can do that, all the professionals at the table honor that, I think that scenario where the child is not going to go home can be conducted in a more sensitive, caring way. But there are times where it's not handled in that manner, and it can lead to a lot of disruptive behaviors on the child's part. Just from my experience and watching how that happens in our cases here in Sandoval and Valencia.
Yeah. And so what kind of cases are what kind of scenarios are ones where kids it's not in their best interest to return home? Because I think sometimes when we think of these cases, we envision, always the worst case scenario. And I think that there's a lot of, and we've heard this from other agencies as well, that there's a sense that, we're trying to somehow put kids in unsafe homes. When I used to represent parents, I would tell folks, look, I can fight hard for this person because I don't have there's no technicality or bag of magic tricks that I'm going to reach into that's going to send a child home to an unsafe home. I mean, what are your thoughts on that?
I think that's a good question. I know that's always the initial fear when we introduce ourselves into a new environment, as social workers working with the parents, and advocating for parents. And people, really, they think that we're going to lie or do something that's going to harm the child. So in New Mexico, everyone's a mandated reporter, in many states. I would be just by the nature of me being a social worker. But beyond that, in New Mexico, everyone's a mandated reporter. There is not, I wouldn't, if I believed a child was in harm, I would do what anybody else in that scenario would, and I would, make a Sky report, make sure that the CYFD office was reported to them. And in doing, my staff has done that with the parent next to them. In fact, they will let the parent know, hey, this was not okay, and here's what we're going to do.
And how does that go over with it? Like, what is that? That must be.
We do it with respect and with care and consideration and with some education involved. Instead of, they're adults. We have to respect them for the adult and their life experiences. And so we respect them by being honest and say, like, this is what happened and this is where the position you've put me in, and so I'm going to have to do this. Would you like to be here with me when I do it? And typically they'll stay in the room with us and watch us make the phone call, and we'll have the conversation. Do you want to inform your attorney, or should I? Would you like to inform the CYFD worker on the case, or should I do that? How do you want to go about this? And so, we have the conversation. They're a part of it, and typically, I think in all of our experiences, they've understood why we've done what we've done.
Interesting.
There are very few instances where we've done that, but yeah, in our mind, it's about the safety of everyone.
And does it matter to you? Because I know from my own experience in representing parents that how you treat a person makes a really big difference, not only to them, but to other professionals that are working with the parent. And so do you find, and maybe it's changed since we've had the program started here, do you think parents are treated better than they were before, no better than they were before? Is it getting better?
That's so interesting. I would say that they are treated better in most exchanges, and so we're still working on a couple offices, and regions that we're in, but I'm going to use Sandoval as the example because that's the place we've been the longest, Sandoval County. And I would say that initially coming into it, it was very difficult because I spent most of my time just trying to exemplify that I am who I am with all my education and my title, and I'm going to respect this client, and you are too. You're going to watch me do that, and I'm going to demand it of you, and I'm going to call you out on it when it's not happening. And so I spent probably half my energy in the onset of the program just working to establish a pattern of behavior, like we will not disrespect these clients. There's a certain way that you can talk to a person respectfully about mistakes they've made or about how they've created unsafe homes. When you come at anyone in a really negative, demeaning manner, including myself, I'm not going to really want to hear you out initially. I may come to a point where I can, but I also have a level of skill set that is not what some of our parents have, just because they've not had anyone take the time to show them, And so, I would say definitely, not only from the CYFD offices or the mental health providers, but even the attorneys treat their clients better.
That's interesting.
And that is interesting because the attorneys weren't always so cognizant of being sensitive, to the clients and helping control the temperament at the table, which I now see attorneys doing.
Interesting.
Really demanding respect for their clients, and they themselves being more sensitive in how they talk to their clients. I've even watched attorneys borrow some of our clinical language and incorporate that into ways that they interface with their client now. So,
right.
Yeah.
So, and just also being a little bit familiar, at least with attorneys who've worked in Sandoval County, but also in Valencia County, I know that there are some who take their job seriously and advocate strongly, but there's a difference in there also, isn't there, between advocating a position with emphasis and presenting it in a way that demands respect for your client.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. Because in that, I think in the example you gave first, where there's the difference of, advocating strongly for the case, everyone honors the attorney with respect, for their knowledge of the case and for their title and who they are at the table, but that didn't always translate into their client, respect for the client, they separated the attorney from the client, and now you actually see attorneys reacting to the disrespect for their client. And I think that the work in itself, I'm not sure if it leads to sort of this mentality for the attorney also, because no one respects that client, the parent that put the child at harm's way, either through neglect or through abuse.
Mm-hmm.
And so the parents, shadowed with this cloak. And by nature, I'm not sure if the attorneys feel like they need to separate themselves from that. Like if I'm representing this person, is it a reflection of who I am as a person, right? And does that cloak shadow myself and what I do, rather than coming at it from the perspective of I have this person here who has a lack of knowledge, education, and lack of awareness, lack of skill sets. And that's the result of what's happened, is what's where we're at now here at the table, with the CYFD case. And so taking on, instead of the shadow of that negative title or impression, putting on that cape, to defend that client and defend the case and help everyone understand what the original, the impetus is of where the case in itself.
Right. And do you think that some of that comes from, some of it I'm sure is a cultural shift, but do you think that some of that comes from what you all do to help the attorney and the client talk to each other? I mean,
Yes.
really communicate about what's going on?
Yes, I think so. I think so. I think we spend more time with the client than absolutely anybody else on the case. And, at a minimum, we see these clients once a week at a minimum. And we're on the phone with them, repeatedly. We attend appointments with them in the community. We are in their homes. We go to their visits with their children. We are with them at their CYFD meetings. We're with them in court. And so we get to know and understand how to better communicate with that client because of the time that we spend with them. And so we're able to help the attorney understand how to communicate with the client as well. And then on the other end, we help the client understand how not to take things personally, not to be personally offended.
That's hard for all of us.
Yeah, right.
And it can be hard for me.
Yes, and so it's, by nature, attorneys can be very matter of fact, and, they're very focused on the case and the facts. And so that can come across as rather either rude or hurtful or dismissive to the client. And we help the client understand, no, this is their job. This is the case they're working in. This is their focus. And so we help the client understand how not only to communicate with them, but then how to better receive what their attorney is trying to help them with. And the attorney as well. We let the attorney know, hey, this is what the client's tendencies are. They prefer this, mode of communication, or anything that is helpful for the attorney and the client.
I think also some of the things that we've talked about before, just to finish up, is and to make that connection between some of those criminal cases and the cases that you work with, because they are sort of quasi, they're not criminal, they're technically civil, but there are some criminal type aspects to them, certainly, and sometimes they're actual criminal charges, right? But I found this fascinating because in reading this paragraph, this is from Justice Betrayed a Double Killing in Old Santa Fe, and it's about a murder trial. And it was pretty, it was shocking to me because having represented parents, I thought, I have actually heard people say this about attorneys who represent parents, where it talks about the attorney taking his oath as a member of the bar too seriously and working too hard as an attorney who wasn't really going to get paid at all, and working for somebody, at least in this case, who was accused of murder. And there were some other aspects to that as well. So this is an African American in Taos. In the late 19th century. And it seems to me that some of this really hasn't changed a whole bunch. I mean, do you still see some of that in working with parents?
Yes, I do. The lack of just basic human respect, and how we engage with one another as professionals working together. You know, those of us who have the parents, those of us who don't, who define ourselves as defending children. So somehow positions you against the parent, right? So it makes us, or those working for the parent, the lesser. You know, so what you're speaking to, you know, was being the lesser based on race. You know, for our cases, it is about a lack of justice and defining who is more suited to receive justice, right? And so the children are defined as innocent, right, as the victims in these cases, when in fact that is true, but in tandem with that, the whole family is the victim, you know. And so when we switch our perspective to understanding that, you know, it's a unit that has hurt itself and is wounded, and working towards, you know, attempting to remedy to the best of our abilities that, and enabling the family together to work towards healing and bettering themselves as a unit, instead of coming at them as something lesser and pitting ourselves against the parents, you know, and defining who is worthy of receiving our help, who is worthy of justice. And then we tear it apart that way as humans, and I'm not sure why I see that over and over again. And it constantly takes work to bring people to, you know, just treat one another with respect on the basis of the humanity within all of us, and then addressing the humanity within the family. Lack of wherewithal about really, you know, being okay that this is who your client is,
and that's an okay
and
thing
this is
to advocate for them.
This is good work.
Yeah.
You know, this is good work, and this is real valuable work, because it's not just about defending the client, it's about the family.
Right.
You know, it's about the welfare of the family, not just the one person that you're working with. You know, on cases where I've seen attorneys work with the attorney defending the parent, so the guardian ad litem, or the Beth, what's the word for the children's attorney?
Oh, the youth attorney.
The youth attorney.
Right, and the guardian ad litem, I think we should probably say, is somebody who represents the best interest of the child in court, right?
Okay, yes. And then if there are any other parents involved, and the CYFD attorney, when they work together, those cases can really have an impact when everybody's kind of, instead of being antagonistic but cooperative, in a way where there's respect for each person's perspective and point of advocacy. You know, in the beginning, and I don't think there was that, or I saw many cases where there wasn't respect for the attorney's case, who was representing the parent, you know, and so everybody else would tag team against them at the table, you know, instead of being respectful and working to negotiate when it was allowable, you know. And so now I see more negotiation at, you know, family-centered meetings or mediations, and, you know, there's not this attack mode against the attorney and their client. So.
Yeah, I think that there's a lot to be said for that, where it's sort of a catch-22. I remember working in Sandoval County and having one of my colleagues who represented parents refer to attorneys who do this work as Walmart attorneys. Well, we're just Walmart attorneys.
So there's clearly speaking to a lack of respect for the work they did.
Yeah. I mean, it was sad, and I think